We have to create reference points in order to measure anything whatsoever in any way. So what is this moment? There's a happening. It's not possible to describe or talk about. It's this kind of ineffable fact that allows any aspect, it allows any perspective of itself. All you ever find is experience. All exists within this primary fact, which is experience. And experience is infinite. So anything you look at is infinity. What if you could just view it as, well, it's just happening and it's spontaneous and it's not something you can grasp. It just is. It's beginningless, endless, totally dynamic. And it's the same with everything. It's all one event. It's all one flow. If you drop all your ideas you've ever had about anything whatsoever, stop for a second and view the actual situation and just watch. It's just all a flow. There's no separate thing watching the flow. It's just a flow.
We're attempting to use experiences as a way to measure this infinite experiencing. And it's impossible to say what experiencing is, because you don't find the end of it. You only find permeations of it in endeavours such as science and philosophy and spirituality. We're attempting to find this fundamental ground, because we assume that reality has a fundamental ground. So is it mind? Is it matter? Is it quarks? Is it electrons? Is it quanta? Is it God? Is it Brahman? No, it's experience. But the real nature of experience can't be grasped by the mind. And yet it's all that is ever experienced. No matter how we question, no matter what questions we ask, the mode of inquiry, we're always left with a question mark. We can't arrive at any definitive answers. But there is something about the questioning itself that seems, at least on an experiential level, to expand one's perception, delve into the very nature of any experience, of any reference point, and we find the same experiencing, we find the same indescribable, incomprehensible isness. So no matter which way you look, you always find the same. You're listening to the Nonduality Podcast. This is Nick Higham from nisargayoga.com, and with me is Paul Dobson.
All you ever find is experience. And obviously we bang on about this every single time, but it's true. All you ever find is experience. All exists within this primary fact, which is experience. And experience is infinite. So anything you look at is infinity.
In some sense, man is a microcosm of the universe. Therefore, what man is a clue to the universe. We are enfolded in the universe. David Bohm. We can paraphrase that as the universe is a macrocosm of man. Therefore, what the universe is a clue to man. The universe is enfolded in man. Whatever this form is, which we tend to call a body, mind, is what the universe is in nature. There is a school of thought that says that the universe is fractalian in nature, but really the universe or reality is experiential in nature. All you ever find is experience, the patterns of experience which manifest as apparently distinct forms, shapes.
Yeah, which is on the surface of things kind of abstract and difficult to grasp perhaps. But if you look at it more closely, you can get your microscope out and keep zooming in forever. Eventually it's just energy, and don't even know what energy is, and that's made up of who knows what, empty space, which is also a question mark. So anything, even the most normal seeming thing, is fractally infinite. Experience is infinite, and therefore any apparition of experience, which is experience itself, is infinite and mind-blowingly so, to the point the mind can't grasp it, so it has to normalize it into stuff that it can comprehend, give it broad terms and reference points it can bounce off. And it's like, okay, I know where I am, I know what's going on, this is fine, I can relax. But actually, it's groundless.
Exactly. can you measure space? And I don't just mean the space out there, the context which encapsulates stars and planets, the solar system, the galaxy and the universe and so on. Space in every sense. So there's space here now. How do we tend to measure space? Through reference points. There's a wall, there's a ceiling, there's a chair. Right, so space is this size. No, you're only talking about reference points within space, which is infinite. And even astronomers estimate the distance of nearby objects in space to attempt to measure space. Without those reference points, could you measure space? And are you measuring space anyway with those reference points? No, you're not. You're just talking about reference points. You're only referring to reference points. And that's what we do with everything, not just with space, but with everything. I know who I am. When we talk about ourselves, we're talking about certain reference points. Who are you? Well, I am male. I have this skill. I have this role. I'm this person. I do this, and so on. These are just reference points. But is there any way to talk about you beyond those reference points? Well, you are experiencing those reference points, which are experiences. So we just are experiencing experiences, and we're attempting to use experiences as a way to measure this infinite experiencing. And it's impossible to say what experiencing is, because you don't find the end of it. You only find permeations of it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? The reference points we've got, well, they're made up, ultimately. But they're only referring to themselves. There's not like an actual ultimate reference point. There's no ultimate original reference point. So any reference points we've got have to be completely fantasy. Complete fantasy. And go back to what you were saying about measuring space. You'd have to find a beginning and an end to space in order to measure it. And that goes for anything that appears in reality is infinite. So you can't possibly begin to measure it. And I find it incredible that we have to create reference points in order to measure anything whatsoever in any way.
Exactly. We're overlooking the actual context, aren't we, in that sense? How do you measure the context of experiencing, of space, of awareness, of reality? What we tend to do is we measure it by focusing on the content, the experiences, the things awareness is aware of, and then conclude with a certain measurement or a certain way of conceiving that. But we're always overlooking the fact that experiencing awareness is infinite and immeasurable. You can't even say it's governed by time. We can attribute time to it. We can chunk it up in many ways. The clock itself does not have the ability to create time. The clock is just a way to measure this.
As usual, it's like a both and situation, but it's also actually beyond time, no time, isn't it? Really, it's like some third condition which the mind can't possibly get hold of. It's like there's too much, so you can look at it from one way, it looks like it's timeless, and you can look at it one way and it looks like it's time, but actually we've just got this. So what is this moment? How can you start to generate time or timelessness from that? There's a happening. It's not possible to describe or talk about. It's this kind of ineffable fact that allows any aspect, it allows any perspective of itself, and it's not an it. And they can all simultaneously be true and all be false at the same time because it's not any of them. It's like God looking in a mirror. Something I thought about when you were talking about space earlier, I just thought I'd drop this in there, is how much space is there in a dream? Do you measure space in a dream? You might have this seemingly infinite space in front of you in a dream. You're just staring up at the night sky or something in a dream, and it looks like it just goes on forever. But from another perspective, there's no space there. And there's no evidence whatsoever to suggest that this sort of waking experience is any different, that it's not all just some sort of apparition of some question mark,
Yeah. No matter how we question, no matter what questions we ask, the mode of inquiry, we're always left with a question mark. we can't arrive at any definitive answers. But there is something about the questioning itself that seems, at least on an experiential level, to expand one's perception. So it's not about arriving at a final conclusion, because there aren't any, clearly. And all those conclusions are always going to be subjective, and they're always going to be set against others. It's only going to be just one experience in this clearly infinite experiencing. Do we settle for reference points? Do we settle for concepts? Or do we delve into experiencing itself? Of course, we can also delve into the very nature of any experience, of any reference point, and we find the same experiencing. We find the same indescribable, incomprehensible isness. So no matter which way you look, you always find the same. There's no way of saying what it is. And yet all of these words are made of this process, this happening, outpouring, expression of what can't be said. But it is.
Yeah. It's almost like it has different modes. The intellectualizing, it turns out to be kind of the mode that this uses to appear different from itself, to confuse itself. And the direct experiencing is approaching itself as reality then, and not as its ideas about reality. You're approaching it directly as it just reveals itself. The ideas about it and stuff fall away.
Going back to reference points and attempting to find this ground of reality, that's really the goal, isn't it? In endeavours such as science and philosophy and spirituality, we're attempting to find this fundamental ground because we assume that reality has a fundamental ground. So is it mind? Is it matter? Is it quarks? Is it electrons? Is it quanta? Is it God? Is it Brahman? No, it's experience. But the real nature of experience can't be grasped by the mind. And yet it's all that is ever experienced.
When I've really pushed the limits of psychedelic and meditative states, there's no ground that I can find. It's never-endingly subtle. There's an assumption that there's a ground. There's an assumption that there's cause and effect. There's an assumption. And what if you could just view it as, well, it's just happening and it's spontaneous and it's not something you can grasp? How much cause and effect is there in a dream? Is there anything pushing on another thing in a dream? Or is it just an apparition of what we might call a dreaming mind, whatever that is? And it's all just a magical apparition of that question mark we were talking about. But the only thing that we can know for sure is there's experience, and it's groundless.
If you finally find the ground of reality, then you are experiencing the ground. So the ground is therefore made of experiencing. In that sense, we may as well say this floor, the seemingly physical ground you're sitting on now, is the ground of reality because it's made of reality only. And reality is the only ground, but it's not a ground as in a 2D flat plane. It's dynamic. It saturates all.
It just is. It's beginningless, endless, totally dynamic. And it's the same with everything. Consider what these experiences actually are. You're looking at infinity. So moods, pain, anything whatsoever. Do I have any idea what sadness is, other than what I've learnt about it, and that it's got this kind of this sort of tone or texture to it? But what are any of those things? What if sadness is some ultimate condition that reality is manifested as itself just to achieve sadness? And there's me going, oh, sadness, quickly, got to get rid of this. Well, how do you know sadness is a bad thing? And what is the sadness? I have to have made a reference point, which only appears in imagination. There's no actual reference point there that says sadness is bad.
Yeah, the mood or the experience we call sadness is one reference point, and we have to set it against another's reference point to actually conceptualize it. You know, this is sadness in comparison with happiness. Without an opposing reference point, what is it? All you can say, it's just life. What really are these reference points but just modulations of experiencing appearing as these apparently distinct experiences, but born of experiencing, made of nothing but experiencing. Experiencing is irrefutable, but incomprehensible. So that amounts to the fact that your sadness is incomprehensible. You don't know what it is, really. You can't get to the bottom of it. You can't really define it. So it may as well be infinity. So there you go. You're looking for infinity, you're looking for reality. And it's there, right there, in the very presence of sadness or whatever mood or state you're experiencing.
Absolutely. The interesting thing about that is it's not some sort of bypassing where I'm just pushing sadness away and calling it something else. It's the ultimate honouring of sadness in a way, of what that is. It's not sadness, it's, well, what is it? It's the ultimate honouring because you're absolutely with it. There's no way of doing that investigation and not being truly, absolutely with whatever that is, whatever that kind of texture or feeling or sensation and mood we call sadness is. It's, you're absolutely with it. It's like going directly into the fire, isn't it? Like directly into the sun. The more you go into it and you get dissolved by it and you are it, and therefore there's no outside condition called sadness anymore. It's just dissolved into infinity.
It's you. It's literally you. There's not you and the experience. There's only you, and you are both the experiencer and the experience, seamlessly one. So, and therefore, in that sense, there's no need to fight.
It's all one event. It's all one flow. If you drop all your ideas you've ever had about anything whatsoever, stop for a second and view the actual situation and just watch. It's just all a flow. There's no separate thing watching the flow. It's just a flow.
Yeah, that's all there is. And that flow of life is that which is most consistent. It's kind of a sentience.
Yeah, it's alive, isn't it? You can't take something dead and still and just create all this dynamism, this life. It's so alive, it's vibrant, everything's vibrant, even deep samadhi is vibrant. It's pure vibrancy. That's the power source. It's like, it's just buzzing, and it's like pure electricity.
It's all you ever find. Wherever you go, you only find the same life, don't you? Life has no opposite. You never find the opposite of life. You never find the end of life, therefore. You find reference points within life, a reference point called death, a reference point called birth. But they're just experiential reference points unfolding within this infinite life.
Yeah, if you've got a duality, if you've got reference points, it makes sense for death. There's a beginning and there's an end, there's an up and there's a down, there's a you and there's a me. But if that's not the case, and this just is inexplicably alive, without beginning or ending, just miraculously beyond our capabilities of intellectually understanding it, it just is. Opposites like life and death don't make sense any longer.
Taking any aspects of your experience and just really exploring very closely the texture, the energetic makeup. It's like taking a microscope or even a telescope and zooming in to outer space or to inner space. And you never find the ultimate substance. You find experiencing.
This is all one system. This is all one dynamic organism. And it's completely inseparable. So you can explore any direction you want. If you take it to the extreme in that direction, you will come up with the same result.
Yeah, if you want to know the nature of life, of reality, look closer into the nature of things.
Everything's always as it should be, because there is obviously no should other than what is. This is that happening right now. Whatever you experience is that happening. So it can't go wrong.